Jared Polin, FroKnowsPhoto.com, here with another photo of the week. And this week, I bring you a photo that I captured in 2007 of one of the greatest rock photographers of all time. I may have talked about this before, but I want to talk about it again, as I got a call the other day from this gentleman's estate, because unfortunately he passed away about 6 months ago from the time of the filming of this. This is Jim Marshall, one of the greatest rock and roll photographers. Started in the 50s. He was there. Seemed to be a little older than some of the musicians he was photographing. In the 50s, he was photographing the jazz legends. He loved jazz musicians. And in the 60s and 70s, he followed some of the greatest rock and roll artists of all time, like the Rolling Stones and Janis Joplin and the Beatles and Jimi Hendrix. Johnny Cash. He was there for it all, and they handpicked him. Most of the time, the bands really wanted him to be there because he had such a reputation that he took major care and respect for the photos that he took and chose of each artist. He selected the photos that were used, and he never had any complaints from any of the artists about the photos that he selected. You know, he came from a time where I listened to part of a little bit of a documentary where when he was shooting in the 60s, there was maybe 2 photographers in LA, 2 photographers in New York, and a couple across the country actually doing rock photography. Nowadays, obviously, it's a lot different with thousands and thousands of people wanting to be music photographers, and they're stuck in the pit. And Jim Marshall's major thing was you gave him all access, or he told you to go F yourself. Literally told you to go F yourself. You didn't want to cross Jim. You did what Jim wanted. Jim demanded the ultimate respect, and that was to do what he felt was right, and musicians respected that. And I like to say, I had a chance to actually spend time with Jim over the last few years of his life, from this time where I met him in San Francisco to the last time I saw him in New York City at one of his gallery openings. There was nothing like going to get a drink with Jim and hearing the stories that he would tell. He would just go into major details about how much he loved photography and doing what he did, and how, he never had any children. He used to say that his children were his photos, and all of his friends in those photos, and, some of their lives cut too short. One of the Allman Brothers, and just all of the friends, you can just see the passion that he had. He lived the music that these guys sang about. He was there when songs were born. And there's no feeling like that as a photographer, to be there when these things are done and have the ultimate respect of the artists that allow you to be there when these things happen, because not everybody gets that opportunity. And, I don't mean this in any arrogant way at all, but this night when I met Jim in San Francisco, when I was on tour with Perry Farrell, and I showed him a book of work that I carried around, a 4x6 book, and he took a major liking to what was in there, because as I came to follow his work, I realized that my work was similar to what he was doing in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And he kept smacking me in the side of the head going, "I love your work. I love what you're doing." And he just, he may have been a little drunk from what he was drinking, but he kept smacking me on the head because he really, really liked what I was capturing. And that felt great to me, to have the respect of an artist like this, as great as Jim. And, that's awesome. And after this, when I met him in New York to show him some of the photos from the Perry tour, I showed him the photo of Perry Farrell in his underwear, and he goes, "Jared," he goes, "I want this picture." He goes, "Send me an 11x14 and pick any one of my works, and you can have it." So I sent him out an 11x14 of Perry in his underwear, and I selected the Beatles photo from Candlestick Park, that Jim was the only photographer there at the last show for the Beatles in Candlestick Park, and he sent me a signed matted copy of that classic photo. So what a great thing to do. We traded images because he just loves photographs so much that I never got a chance to go to his apartment in San Francisco, but from pictures and from videos that I've seen, it's just lined with photo after photo after photo of great rock photos, and not all of his work, but of his friends' work. So let me, that's the story of the photo for this week, but why don't I go into how I edited it? Because this isn't the final image of how I edited the image. Jim always shot with his Leica. He never shot digital. He always shot usually black and white film because that's what he loved. So here he was at this event taking some pictures. So I was supposed to be taking pictures of Perry, but I've shot Perry now for the last 4 weeks at this time when I was on tour, and I was like, it's not often that the photographer gets photographed and gets great images of themselves. So I'd like to do that, photograph great photographers in action, and this is Jim in action, and I'll explain some more about his nose in a minute, but here we go. Being that Jim's a black and white man here, black and white, that's where this goes. Contrast, boom, goes all the way up. Yes, my exposure's a little off. Let me tell you what I was shooting with first before I get into that. Nikon D2XS, ISO 400. Yeah, big difference here from the D3S to the D2XS. I was only at ISO 400 shooting with the 85mm 1.8 AFD at 1.6 at 1/80th of a second. Wow, going higher than 400 with that camera. I could have probably topped out about 800 or so. I could have probably pushed this to 800 without a problem, but I don't know. I don't know what I was doing, but nowadays I would start at 2000 ISO to do this so I could shoot at 400th of a second. But this was at 80th of a second, as you can see up here at f1.6, and it's tack sharp. Let me develop this. Let me process this RAW file as if I was in the darkroom. Again, the positives of RAW files. You get to process them because that's what you do. I need to bump my exposure slightly, and this is just showing you I was off a little bit. So we'll go about there, and yes, it looks a little over right now, but I didn't boomify my blacks yet and make them nice and thick. Look at this. I bumped my blacks to 20, and look at the change there. Look at this. This is where it started flat. This is where we make it go boom, and this is from a D2XS. Very limiting camera. Great camera at the time, but in comparison to the newer ones, not much going on. But 85-1.4, that's what I needed to use at the time. Look at this. Look, it's sharp, and yes, this is Jim's nose. This is his real nose. And he loved telling stories about his nose. He said how many he says it was smushed because he used to hold the camera there, and that's what happened from all the pictures that he took. His nose went a little smushity smush. That's one story, and the other story is he's gotten a few too many bar fights and ended up with a broken schnoz one too many times. But hey, he was not a bashful guy, and he loved every other word was a curse, but that's okay. It's fun. So here's this image. What should I do with my color temperature? Let's see. Right about there. Yeah, clarity. I don't want to go too far back. I don't want to make Jim look like he was glowing. I want to make him look rough and tough, and that's why the clarity's getting bumped slightly here. But this image captures Jim. Here he is, holding on to his Leica, taking some black and white images. He's visualizing the scene that he is capturing, and I captured him visualizing the scene. So a couple of other shots from that day of Jim, because this was really, I knew Jim's work, but I didn't know the guy behind him, and that's why it was so fascinating to hear about him and talk to him. There was this photo just of him hanging out, and then you may not know, but he took the classic shot of Johnny Cash giving the finger. So he gave me the finger, and I took the picture, and there you go. So here's this image for photo of the week, and I really like how this edited down. This is where it was flat once I changed it to black and white, and there you go. This pops, and that's what it's all about. So closing, I just want to introduce you to some of his books, and this is one of the greatest books from Jim. It's called Not Fade Away. It's very expensive right now on Amazon. This is a personally signed copy to me that Jim signed and sent to me, and for some reason on Amazon, it's almost $1,000 for the book. There are some used copies that I think are $79. I'll put a link up. But this book goes into some of the greatest works of his, along with the stories behind the photos, just telling you about it. You can see that he lived rock and roll. He just lived the life. He was there for the greatest moments in music. That's one book. Another book that came out that you can still get on Amazon is called Trust. It goes through a lot of his color images. It goes through a lot of his black and white images. It's great to have. I got sent in the mail this pocket Cash. It's all Jim Marshall's photos of Johnny Cash and June Carter Cash, and the stories behind it. And the forward is amazing. It just talks about how they wanted Jim there and how amazing Jim was when he, was with the family. It's a must read. I think on Amazon you may be able to read the forward, and I would definitely do that. And actually, right before I made this video, I ordered a book called Proof, where Jim showed his proof sheets in a book. That means, for those of you who don't know, when we were in the dark room back in the day, you would have your proofs. You would have your negatives, and you would lay them on a piece of photo paper. You would then put it in a proof. Well, I don't even know what we used to call them. Proof copy. Basically, a piece of glass would smush down the paper, and then you would expose it to light. Then you would develop it, and that's how you had a proof sheet. You had a picture of every piece and all the negatives and everything like that. So for Jim to put up his proof sheet, it shows you that he's probably got some amazing images that weren't the keepers, but it shows you the keepers and how he got to the keepers. So for somebody to put up their proof sheets to show you the images is amazing. And I just actually ordered that book. I think it's $27 on Amazon. I don't own that book, and I figured I might as well buy that book. So I just ordered it on Amazon before I made this video, and I should have it in the next couple days. And I can't wait to go through it and see the proof sheets. And that brings me to, I'm going to upload some of my proof sheets from college. That should be pretty fun. When you were limited to 36 shots and you had to make the best of it. And what was cool about proof sheets, you could see your percentage of good shots or not good shots. It's amazing in 36 shots what you could get, and the amount of quality images you got when you just didn't motor drive. Like nowadays, we shoot 36 shots in a couple minutes because we know we're going to go through and pick some of the best shots. But when you were limited to 36 and you had to get it right there before you changed the film, it's amazing to see if you got like 90% of your shots are keepers. It's just amazing. And the funny thing is, I bet you in the book there's going to be times where the very last shot on a roll would be the greatest shot that he got. So it's just really cool to look at things like that. So that's the long story for the photo of the week. But Jim was an awesome guy, and I'm making this because his legacy has to live on, and every one of you guys need to know his work, whether you're into music photography or not into music photography, just to know what he captured and to see the emotion that he captured in images that is just not being captured today. With the paparazzis and everybody shooting from the pit, rarely people get the access to do what he did, which is go behind the scenes and capture. And that's how I live my life also. It's going behind the scenes and getting the images that the other people just don't get because they don't get the access. And it comes with respect. And Jim had the respect, and you have to earn that respect. And once you earn it, you cannot lose it by doing what the paparazzi do. And if you get a bad image or somebody doing something, if you publicize it and send it to the tabloids and sell out like that, you can't do that. So I'm following in the footsteps of Jim and what he set forth to do. I want to continue that and continue his legacy, and hopefully one day be remembered like Jim for capturing great images that other people didn't capture that tell stories. Jared Polin, FroKnowsPhoto.com. Rest in peace, Jim. See ya.